I thought when you were mentioning the very early times here in Pardubice, you would be actually referring more to the turbulent times. You didn't mention any of those, but we'll leave that to the side. Thank you very much. That was very, very kind of you. Dear friends, dear colleagues, dear students, it's a great pleasure for me to be back here and talking to you. I will be talking about my recent research, which I've been doing since 2015. I have to show you this. This is part of the ERC policy. It is an ERC advanced grant research carried out, well, it has been the project, it is a project of Chris Hahn, and it takes place in 8 different countries. And I'm one of the researchers as well as doing research coordination. My research part is actually quite small, but it includes 7 PhDs and 2 postdoc positions plus Chris Hahn and myself. I do have some pamphlets here for you to have a look at. It's about the project. Now, the title of my paper, it is actually a paper which has appeared. I will be talking about some of the themes of this paper. It is, I hope you apologize me, Alessandro, I didn't realize you were going to be here. It's of course Latin, pecunia non olet. I don't know whether I'm pronouncing it correctly. What it means is money does not smell. This famous saying is attributed to the Roman Emperor Vespasian, who ruled 69 to 79, who was reported to have collected tax money from Rome's latrines. Yet the saying is equally famous through Karl Marx, who used it in volume 1 of his Capital to illustrate how money attached to a commodity through exchange does not reveal its source, has no smell to speak. This is where it comes from. Now in this paper, I use this image of the non-smelling money to look metaphorically backwards at how money earned from smell, from roses, loses its smell when it becomes price and profit. In order to follow this process of exchange and transformation, I examined the conditions and process of rose farming and the procedure of rose oil production in Sparta. Now, rose oil industry in Sparta, it's an old industry. It is valued as tradition and as being profitable. Rose oil products are used, they have been used traditionally and locally in religious rituals. On the whole, people seem to share an interest in maintaining the industry, and presently rose oil and other rose products are used in primarily cosmetic and aroma industry, food and health industries. The main challenge in this cycle of agricultural and industrial production and the way they are interconnected is how to guarantee the amount of rose production and supply the demands of the rose oil producers. This is one challenge. And at the same time, to prevent the oversupply of rose and rose oil and then the crash of prices. Okay, this is the sort of big challenge they have. Now, what is my puzzle? What kinds of questions I'm trying to deal with? Well, one of the questions is, how does the price setting mechanism work? Then, when and by whom are prices perceived as being good prices and when as just or unjust prices? What kinds of discourses are there on good and morally approvable prices and profit? And what is the role of religion in these perceptions? And finally, Is there a moral economy of rose and rose oil prices? Of course, these are quite a few questions which I'm trying to explore within the project. Now, let's go to the object itself, to the roses. This is Rosa damascena, the botanical name, obviously stemming from some origins in Damascus, Damascena. It has been grown in the region since the end of the 19th century, but already it existed already in earlier times. During the Ottoman period, it was grown in the western part of Anatolia, in Edirne and around Istanbul, but also in Bulgaria. Bulgaria has become an important source already during the Ottoman times, and today it's the main competitor of the roses grown in the Sparta region. Until about mid-20th century, the rose oil and rose water production was carried out using traditional distillation methods. Since that time, it is now the modern distillation. We'll see some pictures of them. Today, these roses are a brand name for the region and the city. You see them everywhere, more or less. But there are concerns about the production levels and the quality of rose, as well as the quality of the rose oil. Now, who are the actors involved in this rose production? As you see here, this is a family I've been staying with for a while. These are mostly farmers, family farms, and the average size of family farms is about 0.4 to 0.5 hectares, so it's quite small land farming. Approximate number of rose farming households in the region is calculated to be, or it's a very rough estimate, it's about 10,000 families. And it is actually mixed farming. It's not, people do not only grow roses, they grow other things as well. And the sources say that family farms use up to 20% of the land for rose cultivation. There are some big farms, this is rather recent, but the big farms have the problem of finding labor for harvesting, at the harvest time. So I will talk a bit about the harvest procedure. It is very intensive and a short period. The other actors, of course, are the laborers, rose-picking laborers. Roses are picked very early in the morning, from about sunrise until about 10 to 11 hours. So this is the ideal situation. This is because in the picture what you have seen, the specific kind of rose, it is an oil-bearing rose, and the warmer it gets during the day, the fragrant oil evaporates. So you don't have the oil anymore. That's why it needs to be sort of collected quickly and as early as possible. The rose cultivation period is now. It should have started about this time of the year, usually the sort of first or second week of May. Last year in 2016, when I was there, it had already started the end of April because of the mild winter they have had. And it lasts about mid-June, reaching the peak towards the end of May. At the peak season, at the sort of time when the most flowers are there, a rose picker could pick up to about 30 to 40 kilos a day. Although I haven't seen anybody picking more than 30 kilos, but this is what is being said. A rose garden of about 0.5 hectares could give about 3.5 tons of roses in a season, but this of course depends on the soil, on the irrigation, age of the trees, how much precipitation there has been, climatic conditions, etc. And from about 3 to 3.5 tons of roses, one can distill about 1 kilo or 1 liter rose oil. But this could of course change according to the quality of the rose and good management of picking and processing the roses. Now, this is an announcement which was put up by the municipality of a small town. This small town has rose cultivation as a major agricultural activity. Almost all rose oil firms buy their roses there. The announcement says that in the year 2016, the rose pickers' pay was about 1.20 Turkish liras per kilo. And this makes about 36 cents. And for you in the Czech Republic, it's about 10 crowns. So it's very little money. Yeah? This is for picking. This is not the price of the rose. If one wants to estimate the daily earnings of a rose picker, you saw the picture of the rose pickers in the previous one. I have been picking with them from 5:30 in the morning till about 12 o'clock midday without a break. I tell you, I was completely exhausted. I couldn't even continue anything anymore. The strongest of them picked about 27 kilos, meaning for a day's work, she would get something like 32 liras, which makes about 27 crowns for the 7 hours work she has put in. Comparatively, a day's payment for picking cherries or apples, and there are many cherries and apples in this region, it's really the sort of apple region of Turkey. The daily payment is about 50 liras, which makes about 15 euros. So this is a longer time, but there is breaks. You have tea breaks, you have a lunch break. Usually the lunch is even given by the owner of the garden. But nevertheless, the women who were picking roses with me, they were saying, well, they actually prefer this work because it stops earlier, and if they have some paid job afterwards, they could go and do their paid job afterwards. So they were not necessarily sort of seeing this as being bad labor. Okay, here you see the rose pickers at the scale. These scales are very important. This is where they are, where the roses are weighed. The sacks of roses come to the scales, and as you see here, each picker watches very carefully how much is being recorded in her name. And then at the end of the season, she would get the total sum of what she has been able to pick for the season. The scale keepers, they are called kantarcı. Kantar is the word for the scale. I wonder whether it's Italian origin, might be. These are quite important people, the keepers of the scale, because they are the ones who recruit the rose farmers to bring their roses to a particular rose oil firm. So they're quite important. I don't have time to go into the details here. This scale was owned by the Single Agricultural Cooperative. It's Gülbirlik. I will be talking about it in a while. After the roses are piled up at the scales, and they are then transported to the factories. Here you see the roses arriving at a rose oil factory. There are some 17 rose oil firms buying roses at a large scale and producing rose oil. And another product, important product, is what is called rose concrete. It is like rose wax. And this is also used in cosmetic industry. Then there are other producers of rose oil and rose water. These are smaller, and their produce is mostly used in the food industry, like using it for rose jam, or using it for Turkish delight, lokum with the rose flavor. The factories mostly work during the harvest time, that means May till about July, and they employ up to 20 workers. Permanent staff are usually not more than 5 people, hence these are quite small firms. And the specialty of rose oil production is, of course, the immediacy of the harvest and the distillation. As I suggested, the roses should not wait, especially not in the heat of the day. They should be transported swiftly to the factories, put into processing. And then they are separated into these two procedures of rose oil distillation and rose wax distillation. Here just to show you what the distillation machines look like. This is for rose oil distillation. Here you see the picture. In the picture, about 500 kilos of roses are put into these cauldrons, and then on top of it, one puts about a ton water, and it takes about an hour or so for the distillation procedure. And here you see at the top of this little container, this is the oily bit, and then that is separated from the rose. It is distilled once again so that it gets pure rose oil, and the rest is usually used as rose water. Now let's go to the issue about the prices. I collected the prices since 2010. As you could see here, I hope there is steady increase in prices since 2010. If you look at the very right column, 4 on the very right, this is the column for rose oil price in euros. So from 2010 to 2016, it went up from 5,000 euros, 5,000 more euros for 1 liter rose oil to 11,000. So it's more than twice. If you look at the column 2, this is where I have the rose prices in Turkish liras. Rose prices have tripled, okay? But then, of course, if you put the euro in between, you have the inflation. Then the column 3 shows what the rose prices are in euros. It's again not much more than the increase rate of the rose oil. Now, rose producers get paid in Turkish liras, but rose oil producers, of course, they all export. I mean, almost all the rose oil produced in this area gets exported. That means they are earning their profits in euros. And of course, they benefit from inflation. So one of the questions I have in mind is, how do people perceive these different rates of price increases? Now, what are the challenges for rose producers? I'm trying to think about the different actors here. It is a relatively easy agricultural production process for most farmers. It is only one of the produce they are engaging in. It's because of the mixed farming. But at the same time, it is difficult to recruit labor at harvest time, especially if it's large land size. What is the strength, or what is the sort of their advantages in this business, in this production process? It is easy to start cultivating roses. It is easy to sell from location. As I said, it gets collected in the villages. It is easy to give up and change to another agricultural product if prices are disappointing. And here maybe I could mention the family I know well. They had, for instance, about 3 years ago, they had planted a new garden, and this was one row of roses, and next to it were cherries. And they said, well, we'll wait to see which one is more profitable, then we'll have to cut, of course, the other one, because you can't really have them both. They will be then preventing one another. Now, as I said, there are oil-producing private firms. So what is the strength of them? Almost all firms with factories, except for 2 of them, are owned and run by local people. Now, these maintain an image of working for the common good. They claim to work for sustainability of the traditional industry and for regional development. They are able to offer good prices in advance payments, credits. This is something very important which I don't have time to go into. And they keep and control the commodity and price connection between the rose producers and the world cosmetic and aroma industries. These are the ones who know how this business works. Now, what are the challenges to them? Firstly, the problem is how to secure sufficient share of the rose harvest for their own rose oil production. Actually, it is said that almost all these rose oil firms have more capacity to process roses, but they don't get enough. Secondly, getting the best price for their rose oil from foreign cosmetic firms, but keeping it a secret. So this is a big secret thing, nobody tells for how much they're selling their rose oil. Furthermore, it is in the skills of guessing the best possible price for rose at payment time, because the roses are picked, as I said, in May, June, but the rose farmers are paid only after the rose oil gets sold. And then finally, not having keeping the rose prices under control, but not disappointing the farmers. They talk about, they use this Turkish word küstürmek, which means to disappoint and actually lose the people. So it's not only disappointing, but losing the customers. As I said, there is this cooperative, Gülbirlik. I have 5 minutes, I won't go into its history. Let me just say what role they have. They act like the state, as I call it. It's not a state cooperative anymore. It used to be, but not anymore since 2000, but they still act like the state, and they keep the image of protecting the common good. It says it represents tradition, religious values, and continuity, and the power of rose producers. Actually, they claim to have some 18,000 members. They claim to have. And the cooperative keeps private firms at bay through tactical use of pricing and image management. So, whose moral economy is it? As I said, rose producers seem to be satisfied. They say it is still a good price. As we saw, the price has tripled in 7 years. The rose oil producers say they muddle through the price strategy, but that it still pays to do so. And the cooperative has to muddle through the critiques. There's lots of critique to the cooperative, like for all cooperatives more or less, but it maintains its position as good price maker and tradition keeper. So some concluding points. The Sparta's rose producers are embedded in the global capitalist market economy, so there is some dependency with world market, cosmetic industry, and prices. Roses in Sparta are cultivated for their good price, but they are not the only source of income for farmers. So it's not really a subsistence issue in that sense. It's not about main livelihood. And rose and rose oil production start in Sparta, but pricing is determined by the international market of cosmetic and aroma industry. So there is some kind of over-determination of rose oil price by global firms. So if we go back to moral economy, the rise of rose and rose oil prices I described above is framed within the market economy, and prices are seen as being still good. Concerns about moral economy seem to emerge when the uncertainty of the market and prices and the fear of boom and bust become overwhelming. So there is a sense of moral outrage. It's a bit similar to what E.P. Thompson has been talking about the rise over bread prices. There is some similarity. So moral economy here enters into the discourse. It's a discursive element in this procedure when firms, for instance, start talking about one another, accusing one another of cannibalism. They say it's like yam yams. The Turkish word is yam yam for cannibalism. Or they say people are trying to grab the food on the table. So this is again a very sort of religiously, culturally embedded notion of trying to grab something away from people, from people's food. So my final point here, moral economy and concern about just prices could well be emerging within the market economy, and they do not necessarily represent some anti-market attitude and values. And this is my sort of critique to what Chris Hahn has been arguing in an earlier work. Nevertheless, the concealment and mystification of prices, which Jane Guyer has been talking about, and which takes place in price formation, could lead to tensions between good and just prices, especially if the vulnerability of the market, boom and bust fears become imminent. Thank you.